Good afternoon. I'll call this meeting to order. This is the Finance and Government Operations Committee of the City Council. I believe we have all counselors are present or about to be present here in just a few minutes. But we'll go ahead and get started. I think Counselor Pena is logging on now or very shortly. We should be seeing her. This is a remote or online meeting where all participants will be on video or audio conference. We are holding this meeting remotely so that everyone can participate safely while we are conducting business under a public health emergency. We appreciate your patience as this FGO committee meeting is conducted this way. Members of the public will be able to speak to the committee if they are signed up for public comment per the rules published on Friday with today's agenda. Members of the public will be moved from the Zoom waiting room into the meeting room. Do we have public commenters signed up? Okay, very good. They will remain muted until they are called upon to speak, at which point they will have a minute and a half to provide comment to the committee. After that, they will again be muted. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting live through YouTube. The live stream can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. And for those watching on the live stream, thank you for joining us. So we'll go ahead and start with a public comment. Mr. Moya, would you, as our Zoom moderator, will you please move all the members of the public who signed up to speak? Everybody's in. Okay, great. Hello to those of you who are joining us for the opportunity to make public comment. If you're watching the live feed for this meeting, please mute or turn that off at this time. So just a few ground rules. Comments are to be addressed to the committee members only, and each participant has 1.5 minutes to present. Any disruptive conduct will result in removal from the Zoom meeting. That's not going to happen, I know. There will be 1.5 minute time limit. The timer will start once you begin speaking, and the Zoom moderator, Mr. Moya, will let you know when your time is up. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Mr. Moya now.
Our first speaker is Terry Storch. Please unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking. Ma'am, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Excuse me, sorry. Okay, my name is Terry Storch, and I'm a retired attorney. And my story on paid sick leave is I had it my entire professional working life, and I took it for granted, like clean water coming from a tap. And like water, I used it when I needed it, but did not leave the tap on and did not waste the water. And that is how I saw my coworkers use it as well. To continue with that analogy, it's distressing that there are those without access to clean tap water when they need it here in our community. I come at the issue of paid sick leave as a consumer. COVID, I will not go to a business that does not have paid sick leave for employees, and I will not buy takeout food unless the business has paid sick leave. As the preamble to this ordinance states, it's about community safety. It's high time to make this work. After sitting through 4 years of public meetings about paid sick leave, I cannot help but conclude that opposition has much more to do with the business not wanting another government regulation and less to do with whether the business can afford paid sick leave, incorporate it as overhead, and pass the cost on to the customer. It's time to give community well-being its due and to recognize that working individuals are the engine of the economy, that they're continually left last in line when it comes to safeguarding what is essential to them and to all of us, health and safety, by making them choose between getting paid and going into work when ill or staying home and losing income. Please, let's get to work and pass this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Storch.
Our next speaker is Jennifer Longobardi. Please unmute yourself and feel free to turn your video. I think I might need to turn it on for you. And your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank the members of City Council for allowing me to speak today. My name is Jennifer Longobardi. I am speaking as a grassroots representative of New Mexico Working Families Party. As a single mother of 3 children, I can't tell you the countless times that I had to choose between staying home with my sick child who was burning 106-degree fever, projectile vomiting, or going to work so that I didn't lose my job and the ability to provide for my children. I remember the most difficult time that I had to make the choice of leaving my child in the emergency room so that I can go back to work so that I didn't lose my job and the ability to provide for my children. This is inequity. Paid sick leave provides economic security for workers who will otherwise lose income from work if they must take time off due to illness. But paid sick leave also reduces the transmission of illness and disease. Many workers, including myself, do not have the luxury of working from home. Paid sick leave provides economic security. In our current state, we face uncertainty due to COVID-19 pandemic and have no reliable information as to when the pandemic will subside. There is stark inequality in how the pandemic impacts New Mexicans economically. Pandemic or not, paid sick leave is long overdue. We need you to make the right choice this time. I urge you to pass paid sick leave for all workers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Gabriela Carrillo. If you can unmute yourself and feel free to turn your video, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking. Ms. Carrillo? Ms. Carrillo, you are on mute. If you could unmute yourself, please.
Got it. ¿Ya me escucha?
There you go. Please proceed.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Gabriela Carrillo. Si yo hubiera tenido días de enfermedad pagados, yo no me hubiera contagiado del COVID-19. Yo sospechaba que alguien estaba contagiado en mi lugar de empleo, pero tan solo pensar que pudiera perder 5 días sin pago me hizo dudar y fui a trabajar en lugar de quedarme en casa y me contagié del COVID-19. Días de enfermedad pagados me hubiera salvado del trauma que me causó el estar contagiada del COVID-19. Ya es hora de que los patrones dejen de pensar solo en ellos y reconocer que nosotros somos los que hacemos el trabajo que a ellos los hace ricos. Yo soy maestra de la educación temprana, trabajadora esencial. Estoy en peligro todos los días con los niños y con los padres de familia de los niños y mis compañeras de trabajo. Yo me cuido muy bien porque tengo mucho miedo de contagiarme otra vez. Aún tengo efectos del COVID-19 que son dolores de cabeza muy fuertes y así sigo trabajando. Días de enfermedad pagados, lo único que nos puede ayudar es a seguir trabajando sanamente y sin ningún temor. 56 horas por 365 días de trabajo es lo justo. Les pido nuevamente por su apoyo sobre los días de pagos de enfermedad. Gracias.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Stephanie Welch. Please feel free to turn on your camera and unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am Stephanie Welch, an attorney with the New Mexico Center on Law and Poverty. The Center on Law and Poverty supports the proposed paid time off ordinance because no one should have to choose between a paycheck and their health and safety. Over 100,000 workers in Albuquerque don't have paid sick leave and have to make that choice. That burden falls most on those of us who can afford to go without pay the least. 90% have annual incomes below $15,000, and access to paid sick leave differs substantially according to race and ethnicity and gender. Workers who are white have more access to paid sick leave than those who are Latinx or Black. Even Congress recognized the importance of paid leave and passed a law requiring paid sick leave for COVID-19 needs. but that federal requirement expires at the end of this year, and we need paid leave for more than just COVID. As the city tries to address this crisis and keep our community safe going forward, it should listen to the people who have been getting us through this, the workers who have risked their health, keeping everyone fed and cared for throughout this pandemic. Listen to them about the risks they're facing and what we need to help us all stay healthy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Lynn Anderson. Ms. Anderson, please unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Good afternoon. I am Lynn Anderson, president of NAOP, Commercial Real Estate Development Association. We are opposed to the passage of the proposed O-2039 at this time. New Mexico's September unemployment rate was 9.4%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the 8th highest in the nation. Plus, COVID stats have surged in October, forcing many businesses to send home some, if not all, of their workforce to be quarantined if one person has tested positive. Congress does offer paid sick leave related to COVID to employees. This will undoubtedly be renewed in 2021. As beneficial as this is, it is no remedy for businesses that have trouble keeping the doors open with few or no employees. How much harder to do so with additional mandated cost. Our members are baffled why the council would consider this an appropriate time to mandate additional cost to the private or public sector. We understand that some councilors are in support of a paid sick leave policy, but now? Let's address this issue when we have defeated the one currently facing us. Many businesses cannot fight both battles at the same time and survive. There needs to be additional time to recover from this devastating pandemic. Please do not send this bill to the full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Our next speaker is Eric Shimamoto. Please unmute yourself. Feel free to turn your video, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I appreciate the opportunity. According to the Centers for Disease Control, 60% of food service workers go to work when they're sick. And when asked why, overwhelmingly, they respond, because there is no sick leave policy at my job. As someone who spent decades working in food service myself, I can personally say that the other 40% are maybe not being honest on the survey or just didn't get sick that year, because basically no one in food service has sick leave. So everyone works sick, and that is absolutely crazy. These are the last people we want having to choose between a paycheck and caring for themselves or caring for loved ones or caring for everyone, because if COVID has taught us anything, it's that staying home when you're sick is caring for all of us. So we have a massive failure of public health policy that we could address. And it is also a failure of racial justice, because anyone who's been in restaurant kitchens knows that they are full of people of color, just like the service industry and the hospitality industry generally. And COVID is disproportionately affecting people of color. This is not a coincidence. So we have a dual problem. We have built an economy that spreads disease, and it denies basic workplace dignity to the same people who have the least access to basic opportunity. So I ask you to take the opportunity to address both of these issues by passing on Ordinance 2039. I ask you to do that in order to level the economic playing field by providing dignity to all workers and to stop the spread of infectious disease, so we actually can rebuild our whole economy when we emerge from this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Hilaria Martinez. Please feel free to turn your video and unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Hello, my name is Hilaria Martinez. I work with the Center of Equality and Rights, a nonprofit organization. I'm gonna read a story of one of our members in Spanish. Buenos días, me llamo Rafaela y yo soy cocinera en un restaurante local. Soy esposa y madre y también miembro del Centro de Igualdad y Derechos aquí en Albuquerque. Durante esta pandemia, mis horas de trabajo bajaron drásticamente. Sigo trabajando sin acceso a días pagados por enfermedad y es algo que me preocupa por mi salud y la de mi familia. Varios meses atrás, en un restaurante en el que trabajo, se enfermó una de mis compañeras. Inmediatamente la mandaron que pusiera en cuarentena, pero nunca hablaron sobre días pagados por enfermedad, solamente desinfectaron el área de empleo. Mi compañera nunca más volvió a trabajar después de mejorar, ya que dijeron que ya no había trabajo para ella en el momento. Esto me preocupa a mí y a varios trabajadores. Desgraciadamente, muchos trabajadores en Nuevo México se hacen las mismas preguntas. ¿Qué pasa si me contagio? ¿Podré seguir alimentando a mi familia? ¿Podré solventar los gastos básicos? Es por eso que el acceso justo a días pagados por enfermedad para todos los trabajadores en Nuevo México es algo necesario, especialmente ahora durante una emergencia de salud pública. Ha habido muchas formas de alivio y apoyo para negocios. Ya es tiempo que haya protección para los trabajadores también. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarai Bejarano. Please unmute yourself and feel free to turn your video. Your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sarai Bejarano, and I am with el Centro de Igualdad y Derechos, a worker justice immigrant rights organization here in Albuquerque. And today I'll be reading a statement of one of our members who couldn't be here today because they couldn't take any time off. I'll begin. My name is Gladys Pineda. I'm a domestic worker, a single mother, and a member of El Centro de Igualdad y Derechos. I pride myself on being a domestic worker and caring for our seniors and children who are some of the most vulnerable in our community. After the COVID-19 pandemic, I was let go of two of my clients. I now find myself facing difficult times, stressing about the financial issues, but also deeply concerned about my health and the health of my child. It is unfair to me that I, like thousands of workers, contribute to the state's economy, yet we don't have access to the basic right like paid sick leave. The only home that has not let me go is the home of essential emergency service workers. There, I babysit for them and clean their home, but I fear for the health of myself and my son. This is because this family is on the front lines and they are some of the most susceptible to being infected. I am concerned about getting sick and not having paid sick days. We low-wage worker and immigrant workers have always been essential workers. These efforts by essential workers during the pandemic must be recognized, and we must ensure that the health and safety of workers are at the forefront. All families contribute to the social, cultural, and economic fiber of our state. Therefore, we cannot be considered essential when we're treated as expendable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, that concludes our public comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moya. Councilor Sena, did you have your hand raised before the last
Yes, Madam
speaker?
Chair. I actually was hoping that Ms. Martinez, since reading her statement in Spanish, could actually do the interpretation in English. I don't know if she's still here.
Ms. Martinez, I believe you're still with us. Could you please unmute yourself and bring your video up? And
Yes.
would you mind giving us a translation in English, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Okay. Mi nombre es Hilaria Martínez y soy organizadora comunitaria con el Centro de Igualdad y Derechos aquí en Albuquerque. Voy a leer para un miembro que no pudo estar presente precisamente porque no tiene días pagados por enfermedad. No sé si están interpretando. ¿Hay un interpreter?
Sorry, Ms. Martinez, Madam Chair, can I just clarify my question to Ms. Martinez?
Yes, please.
Ms. Martinez, could you actually give an interpretation of the statement you read of Rafaela, who gave you, I know you did it in Spanish, but can we have the English interpretation? You know, I'm hoping that we have an interpreter on call next time to do live interpretations of the statements, as many will be giving their public comments in Spanish. So I do hope that we can do that pretty soon. But in the meantime, can you actually do the story in English?
Yes, yeah, I'm gonna do it. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Rafaela and I am a cook in a local restaurant. I am a wife and mother and also a member of El Centro de Igualdad y Derechos. During this pandemic, my work hours dropped drastically. I keep working without access to paid sick leave, and it's something that worries me about my health and that of my family. Several months ago, at the restaurant where I work, one of my colleagues got sick, and they immediately sent her to self-quarantine, but they never talked about paid sick days. They only disinfect the place of employment. My coworker never came back to work after she got better. As they said, there was no work for her at that time. This worried me and several workers. Unfortunately, many workers in New Mexico ask themselves the same question. What happens if I get infected? Will I be able to continue feeding my family? Will I be able to pay the basic expenses? That's why fair access to basic days for all workers in New Mexico is necessary, especially now during a public health emergency. There have many forms of relief and support for businesses. It is about time that there were protection for workers too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez, and I appreciate you bearing with us and giving us the English version of that. Um, and I understand that she was talking to the bill that we're going to be seeing on our agenda here in a little bit, but it does concern me that she doesn't feel like there's and has reason to believe that she's not working in a safe work environment. Uh, so, we might be able to help her with that. If she does need that help, I hope that she will contact the city, the environmental health department at the city, or just call city council. Call the city council office, 768-3100, and we will do what we can to help her out. So I guess that is the last of our public speakers right now. We'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is item A, EC 189. This is the Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency 2020 Annual Report. I'll move the receipt be noted. Do I have a second? There's a second from Counselor Sena. Thank you for that. Counselors, do we have any questions or comments? Or, yes, Counselor Davis.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'll make it quick. Ms. Iverson, thanks for joining us, and we can talk a little more offline, but I wonder if you could give us just a really quick update. This has been an odd year for everybody involved. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what options MRA has to help with developers that have entered into MRA agreements, but obviously development and income for those properties, for example, has really stopped or slowed, like the rail yards and some of the other properties on Central. Do we have some programs or options for them to sort of abate some of those agreements or delay that to give them more time to catch up?
Madam Chair, Councilor Davis, I think for our development agreements, everything is pretty on a case-by-case basis. So we have worked and had conversations with a lot of folks who have outstanding timeline requirements. And so it's just a matter of talking to us and negotiating an amendment to their agreement.
Great. That's great to hear. Thank you. And I'll follow up with you offline. Well, I wanted to follow up with one particular project that would like to do just that. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Iverson, did you want to speak to the bill in any form, the annual report, or any further comment on that?
Madam Chair, I am prepared to, I can make a 5-minute overview, or we cannot. The material was provided, whichever is the will of you and the committee.
Okay. Well, we do have another counselor. Counselor Sena has her hand raised. Counselor, go ahead, please.
you, Madam Chair. Ms. Iverson, I was just wondering, especially since Nuevo Atrisco, I really was hoping that we would be able to go in person to cut the ribbon as they're now open, but with the public health emergency, we've had to delay that for a bit. Can you give an update on Nuevo Atrisco since they've opened their doors, just for the general public to know what's the status of that project?
Yes, Madam Chair, Councillor Sena. So the residential portion of the Nuevo Atrisco project is complete, and we hope to have a ribbon cutting ceremony. I believe that it has been rescheduled for in a few weeks, but of course that has to be a very limited group of folks who go. But it's such a great amenity to that area to have an additional 90 units of affordable workforce housing out there. It really sort of is a landmark, a very tall building out on the west side, so can't be missed. And then there is the commercial corner on that, which we have been working with the developer partners on. And a while back, there was some GEO bond funding that was allocated to that project. And GEO bond funding, we use GEO bond funding a lot in MR projects, often to fund the public improvements, or it's a requirement that they fund the public improvements. So we've been working with them to identify and articulate what the public amenity for that site will be. And I think that you guys will be, you will see that it is moving in the direction of both having a retail or restaurant type of anchor that we know that the community has been really wanting, but also having a community and public amenity, which we can invest the GEO bond funds in and see that corner activated.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Iverson. So if you'd like to give your presentation, I apologize. We probably should have started with your presentation, but if you'd like to, I think we've got it set up so you can share your screen. And you are muted. Yeah, you're muted somehow.
Okay, there we go. Ready? Okay, all right. So I will just be super brief for you guys because you all have the report. But I think that one of the things that's been really exciting at MR is we've been kind of able to relook at our mission. As you know, we were reorganized and moved out of the planning department. And then now we are in the economic development department. And historically, even previously, we were in family and community. And agencies like ours in other cities are oftentimes either in the economic development department or they're actually sort of a quasi-governmental arm of the government that's a little bit outside of the city. So I think that we are maturing as an agency in Albuquerque to be in line with how other cities use this type of function. And our move into economic development, I think, reflects a move towards implementation, a move towards partnership execution, and maybe less away from developing plans for planning's sake, but more towards getting things done and getting things built in our community. So we're really excited about that. You know, our reach in MR is really focused on the urban core, going up Central. The only gap we have in Central is the Nob Hill area. And we had 2 new MR areas that were included this past year. One was in Edo, and the other was the plan for the North corridor for North 4th Street here. So we sort of have the historical crossroutes, both historical Route 66 routes now in our portfolio. I think that our toolkit, it's a good toolkit. I hope that we can expand and grow our toolkit because compared to our partner cities as well, we have a very weak toolkit. So, but we work with what we got. The main thing we do is provide a bond incentive, which is a 7-year tax abatement. We also have some funding available for brownfields. This was a significant accomplishment this past year. We had some EPA funding, federal funding for brownfields cleanup. that was lent out originally for the old Albuquerque High and the Andalus project and the Bell Trading Post. And those loans finally repaid. And so now we have that balance back and we can reissue that and revolve that loan. We also provide fee waivers. So any project that's done in an MR area does not have to pay the city's impact fees. And so that totaled about $840,000 in fiscal year 2020 that was waived on a variety of projects. The largest was the Benny Keith expansion. They alone got about a $300,000 fee waiver package. And then finally, we do projects. And this is where the city really goes in, we identify a site, we buy the site, and then we go out to RFP and find a developer for that site. Over the past 20 years, we've had a really huge impact in the city. We have invested about $49 million, and as a result, had a total investment of 10 times that, of $520 million. So for every $1 that we have in the MRA program, we're attracting 10 times that investment. The biggest thing we do is create housing. There's not a better redevelopment strategy than bringing more people to the inner city areas. About half, or 43% of the housing that we do have done for the past 20 years is affordable. So we really have developed a lot of a mix of housing, but a great deal of affordable housing. And you can see here our other impacts in terms of hotel rooms, or office impacts and jobs created. Our jobs are, about half of those jobs are construction jobs. And so I think that that's important to point out that how big construction industry is to our economy. Our report includes a couple of maps that show our reach, both in downtown and then also citywide, stretching from Unser all the way up to the International District, and north up to San Mateo and Alameda up here. One thing I just wanted to highlight in our recent projects is what a return on investment we provide to the city. So with the Albuquerque lofts investment, the old Albuquerque High investment, we looked at a before and after, what the tax base was before that project and what the tax base is now. And the tax base increased 860%, whereas the tax base for the whole city only increased a fraction of that amount, somewhere around 60 or 70%. So that the growth in that area brought back more tax base, more revenue to the city. We have got our return 10 times over with the investment that we made in old Albuquerque High, with new development that's occurred. That includes Innovate ABQ, that includes the hotel that's being developed. And it really makes sense when we look at our bang for our buck, so to speak, just from a fiscal point of view, from a city point of view, that we do invest in these areas where we're going to see that level of reinvestment, areas that can support density and can have that type of return on investment for the city. This past year, we have about $120 million pipeline. So when I talked about what we've had over the past 20 years of 520, 120 of that is in the pipeline right now. So we've really had an exponential growth in the MRA programs. And that's primarily because of the bonds and finding ways to partner on projects that don't require us to go and find the property and do these kind of big lists, but how can we provide incentives that partner as developers are finding their projects and they have a financial gap. And the bond program is one tool that does that, and we've been able to exponentially increase our reach through that program. Looking forward, you guys have mentioned it, sort of our priorities are getting the commercial component of De Anza done, getting the commercial component of Unser and Central. Doing the residential part of these projects is the easy part. That's the part that has a market for it. It's the commercial part that sort of takes a little bit more figuring out. And of course, obviously now in COVID, it's even more complex. The rail yards is a major project that we are funding. We're have nearly $15 million going forward in a variety of construction and design contracts. We're really just bringing that project to market so that when you have a business and you have somebody who wants to move there, they can look at it and they can see themselves there in 6 or 8 months. In order to get that property to that level, we really had to invest in the infrastructure to make it ready. And then finally, I just want to touch on our big strategy. We're really trying to think about this not on a project by project basis, but on a strategy basis, and how we can surround a whole sort of neighborhood and bring it up. And I think we all know downtown has been suffering. It was suffering before COVID, and it is suffering now. And so we're really focusing on what we're calling the rail trail strategy, which is creating a public amenity through downtown that will be a multimodal public art corridor, as well as a transportation corridor. And we also have several investments in that area. We went out for the RFP for the EDO funds, and we are negotiating an agreement with the Yates for looking at redeveloping their property here, which is called Springer Square, as well as Innovate. They have a property here that they're going to be putting a bioscience center on. This lot right here we have out for RFP right now. We also have applied for a grant for some smart parking technology in this area. So it's all about, how can the public sector put incentives, focused incentives, to create enough density in an area that can help, sort of turn the whole area into being a neighborhood that will help us attract economic development and jobs. So with that, that's my presentation, and I'm really happy to have been able to brought this report to you guys.
Thank you, Ms. Iverson. That was really exciting. A lot going on, and I just wanted to. Well, let me ask first. Is there anybody else who have any comments or further questions for Ms. Iverson? Councilor Pena, is your hand raised?
Yes, can you hear me? Okay. My other computer just wasn't connecting, and this one is. So anyway, trying to get used to another platform here. I just wanted to say to Ms. Iverson, good job. I appreciate all the work you're doing in the MRA. Obviously, everybody here knows my usual complaint is that this predates you. And, the projects that have been completed over the past 20 years, for the first time, we really have that one. I mean, Benny Keith is there, but it's a different type of MRA. But it's really a tax abatement thing. But, Nuevo Atrisco is kind of one of the first projects we've had really under the MRA. And, I just hope that when you're looking at it, that we look at additional investment in the area. Right now we have the Verizon building that's empty, and we really need to put our heads together and really look at what we're going to do there. I think that's an important project that we have to make sure as a city that we keep as a priority, and that's in the MRA. And then we have some other, I've asked this question before, and I hope to have a meeting here pretty soon, but we, in the legislation, when we developed the West Central MRA, we had an opportunity to develop a TIF as part of that. And I really want to look at that and see how you there in the area with some of these projects. And it would have been perfect with Benny Keith coming in, because some of the revenue from that would have gone into West Central. So anyway, I just want to make sure that you keep West Central on the front burner as well. I think it's key. It's, gateway, the West gateway into our beautiful city. And, but great job on all the other projects. And we're really happy with Nuevo Atrisco, and I'm glad we were able to move that forward. So thank you.
Ed, Ms. Iverson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilor Pena. I think that thank you for bringing up tax increment finance and TIF, because I want to just explain that for a second to folks, that we had historically had some tax increment finance districts that were collecting revenue for MRA, and that when we collect that revenue that way, that gives us really flexible non-geo bond funding that we can do a variety of different projects and partner with the private sector in a way that's very unique for the public side. And all of those are expiring. This is the last year that we're collecting any of that revenue. And I think this discussion of creating tax increment finance districts to start collecting those pots of money and having a pot of money for the West Side or downtown is a really timely conversation. We need to look at doing, we're running out of TIF revenue all the way around. So I think we need to look at that as a tool going forward.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. We appreciate everything that you're doing, and in particular, I appreciate the discussions that we've been having in my district along Manal and University, another area with a lot of potential and just really old inventory, real estate inventory over there. So anyway, thank you very much. So we do have a motion and a second for EC 189. Ms. Hinojos, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Busan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
That passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right, then, moving on to item B, which is EC 192. EC 192 is the Early Head Start Quarterly Report for January, February, and March of 2020. We do have 3 of these. I'm sure you've noticed this in the agenda, but we'll go ahead and take them in order. And we have with us the Director Pierce. Thank you for being here. Hi, good to see you. So does anyone, I have a few things on this, but does anyone else have any questions or comments on these particular reports? Okay, so Director, I'm glad you're here to talk about these. You know, I always like to talk about these a little bit. And so we have the 3 of them for the year to date, I think, well, up through September 2020, almost up to date. And I did make some notes on this, but it's going to take me a little while to find them then. Anyway, would you like to, discuss these, ma'am?
Yes, thank you, Counselor Gibson and Finance Committee members. Just as a recall, so yes, you have 3 in front of you because as we changed division management leadership earlier in the year, this important task got not prioritized, and actually so this, you will be getting this on time. So right now with these 3 reports, you're up to date. The next one will be October, November, December, and so then that will come in late January or February. So that's why you have 3 in front of you. The thing I want to highlight that I talked with Dr. Blackman Mosley, our new division manager, is I think it's really notable that we are meeting the Early Head Start attendance guidelines, which are pretty stringent with 85%. And that is requiring in-person attendance, not anything Zoom or remote. So we've got families very engaged in this process. So that's very good. And we're meeting our attendance requirements, which many of you probably recall in our past, we had some trouble with that and took a financial hit, but that's not the case anymore. I also wanted to say that we have a meeting, I want to say that's monthly, with the Early Head Start federal director, regional director. And this is where we've been able to keep up with her about what other communities are doing COVID related. And I would say Albuquerque, with having our teachers present, following COVID safe practices, and really serving our families, our vulnerable families that need this service, we're doing exceptionally well. So I would just want to say that.
Thank you. Counselors, any questions, comments? Okay. So I do have a couple, 2 or 3. I'll try to be brief here, but and it's good to know that the training and the requirements are being fulfilled for in-person centered care for these children. You know, recently we heard from the governor, who gave us grim realities of rising rates of infection, and I'm although she didn't come out and really close anything down yet, but I'm just wondering what your take is on that, and if you think that the centers might have to close again.
Counselor Gibson and members. Well, actually, the state did come out with some new regulation. I want to say it was a week or 2 ago. I have to dig in my email here. And it is requiring every 2-week testing for employees in our child development. And those are the standards coming from the state. And so right now we are working with the union and to letting everybody know that this is what the state is asking for as a practice to keep people safe. And so what we're trying to do is do this as seamlessly as possible so people can get those results, minimize downtime, and just keep it rolling. And I as a side note, I will say, I know we'll get there, but it is a bit of a challenge right now with the amount of people getting testing and just how we're going to have to continue to work on the right sites and get folks this every 2-week turnaround.
Okay, thank you. And one of the questions, actually, I wanted to ask you this before. Does your department, and in particular this program, do you find these reports useful? I mean, have you used any of the findings from these reports to make adjustments or modifications in the program?
Counselor Gibson and members, I love that question. Thank you. No, because it is a great question, because reports should be living, breathing is what I like to say, like they should inform what we do. What I really like on these 3 reports, and you may not recall, but these have a different format. And this is from Dr. Blackman Mosley, our new division manager, where we're really looking at strengths and opportunities. And so I really found this format helpful. And the ones before I found helpful, it just always tells me, are we on track with our attendance? And we meet all the time to talk about those things, but the report does tell me how we're doing on very certain standards with Early Head Start. But I really like the new format on strengths and opportunities. So my answer would be yes. And I think reports, while they do take a little time, I think it's a good discipline, if you will, for team members to have to take stock on how are we doing and where can we improve. So that's a long-winded answer to say, yes, I do think they're important.
Thank you. So I don't think I quite made that motion, but I will move for a receipt be noted on EC 192. Do we have a second? Counselor Sena, thank you. Could we get a roll call vote, please, Ms. Hinojosa?
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Counselor Davis. Thank you.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes, same here.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our second report. This is EC 193, Early Head Start Quarterly Report for April, May, and June of 2020. I'll move a receipt be noted. Counselor Sena, thank you for the second. Counselors, questions or comments on this particular report? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right, and then the last one is EC 197, approval, EC 194, Early Head Start Quarterly Report for July, August, and September 2020. I'll move a receipt be noted. And a second from Counselor Bassan. Thank you. Again, if there are no other questions, then we will move for a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena. Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
All right, thank you. Now we are on item E, which is EC 197. This is the approval of Parametrics Incorporated and other government contract. I'll move approval. Counselor Davis, is that a second? Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments from counselors? Seeing none, let's go ahead and go for a vote, please.
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. And now we are on item F, unless I turn the page too quickly. Item F is EC 198, Mayor's recommendation of award to CAA Icon for multi-purpose soccer stadium feasibility study. Counselor Davis, did you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'd like to make just a motion that, make a motion for no rec to send this forward to full council, but I would like to ask a few follow-up questions first.
All right, I'll go ahead and second your no rec. And go ahead, Counselor.
I just wanted to ask from the administration, I don't have any objection to this particular contract for this phase of the new full sort of playing stadium study. I think it's ready to go, and we should be doing that with, I know we have some state money available, but I'm curious about the update of the money that the council appropriated from the mayor's request from the lodger's tax that was designated for the practice stadium. I have been involved in, I can't count how many conversations now with the county and the United and folks at Mesa del Sol and then at UNM and some other locations about moving that forward. And I'm curious how far we're coming and what progress we've made in terms of getting that practice facility money moving forward for the next season.
So do we have someone from the administration who can
Pat, I
help
think
us with
Mr.
that
Montoya.
question?
Yeah, Madam Chair and Councilor Davis. So let me just give you a quick update. So we've been working closely with the administration and Mr. Rael to identify locations that might be suitable for this field. We're looking at least 5-acre sites, and I believe we have heavily concentrated in the West Mesa or the Mesa del Sol area. We looked at some property adjacent to the amphitheater that's out there now along a stretch of University Boulevard, and then another couple of parcels that might be suitable. But I don't believe that we have narrowed down on an exact location that we can, that the administration is prepared to share with council at this point. We don't have formal appraisals on properties, but at least we have looked at 3 or 4 sites that may be suitable.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I can just follow up and then I'll close. And Mr. Montoya, thank you. I know Mr. Rael's out today and we're thinking of him today and his family, but I wanted to just get on the record here. I'd like to ask the committee just to move this forward with no rec to the full council so that in the next few weeks, as we move that process forward, we can take a look at how long it's taking us to get that process done. I just want to, and Mr. Rael, Mr. Montoya, I know that Lawrence, Mr. Rael and I have talked at length about this along with folks at Mesa del Sol in the state and other entities that might be involved. It's just become a really frustrating process that trying to work. I think the county has made a number of offers to partner with us in order to use county money and city money to build the facility that maximizes the use of all the taxpayer money. And it just seems like the city is continuing to look around at other spaces and other ideas, and we haven't been able to get a location. It's been a little frustrating. And so I'd really, before we approve the sort of moving forward with the next phase of working on the United, I'd really like to see us get an answer and get started and get an agreement on the first phase that was done more than 2 years ago. I think there's a real concern that we're just going to drag this out forever, never spend this money. And quite frankly, this is that lodger's tax money that we're now paying from the general fund on extra bond payments. So I know Mr. Rael and I can revisit, and Mr. Montoya, if you would just pass that along to our folks, that I think we ought to try to resolve that first spending in the next few weeks before we consider the next, or at least that would be my request. So thank you, Madam Chair. And that's the reason I just like to ask us to do a no rec and move it forward. It's not an objection. I just want to see us make some progress here before we move forward.
Okay, so we have a motion for no rec on EC 198 with a second. I second that. So take a vote, please.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena, Counselor Pena, Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes. Yes.
that passes.
Thank you. And moving forward on item G, EC 199. This is a 10 tanker air carrier lease and operating equipment or operating agreement. I'll go ahead and move approval. There's a second. Just raise your hand. Thank you. There's a second from Counselor Davis. Counselors, do we have any questions for staff or the administration on this? Okay, anything from the administration? All right, seeing none, then we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
It passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right, now we are on item H of the agenda. That is EC 200. This is a revenue and expense report for third quarter fiscal year 2020. I'll move a receipt be noted. And I see a second, I believe, from Counselor Pena. Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff or administration on this? Seeing none, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes. Yes.
It passes 5-0.
Thank you. And now we are on item I, which is OC 13, the Office of Inspector General's Annual Report for Fiscal Year 2020. I'll move a receipt be noted. And there's a second from Counselor Davis. Thank you very much. We do have with us our Inspector General. There you are, Mr. Bramlett. Did you want to speak to this bill, sir?
It's like to say that in FY19 that basically the office was rebuilding due to loss of personnel and personnel that were having some medical issues. And the council graciously gave us another investigator. So we have greatly increased the number of investigations that we have done in FY20. We had our first peer review done this year or in FY20 and passed, found to be in compliance with all rules and regulations that pertain and govern offices of Inspector General. And we have done a considerable amount of investigations since the end of FY20. So we're moving on, and I have staff that is really working hard.
Thank you for that, Mr. Bramlett. I appreciate the work that you all are doing there, and as well as the not only the IG's office, but the internal audits office, which is what we're going to be hearing next. So seeing nothing more from counselors or staff, we have a motion and a second for receipt be noted. And could you call a roll, please?
Counselor Bassan.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
Yes.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then, moving on to the auditor's annual report. This is OC 14, Office of Internal Audits Annual Report for fiscal year 2020. I'll move receipt be noted. If there's a second. There's a second from Counselor Bassan. Thank you very much. And Mr. Bramlett, are you here for the Office of the Internal Auditor, or do we have someone?
Yes,
from that
Madam.
office?
Yes, Madam Chair. If I could just start out by making sure that the council is aware that between this time last year, mid-November to mid-December last year, all but one of the staff in the Office of Internal Audit were either promoted to higher positions within the city or left for other career opportunities. So we only had one auditor that was left. So in that period of time, there were not that many audits that were completed. However, we were successful in hiring Ms. Nicole Kelly as the audit manager from the city and county of San Francisco. Unfortunately, as soon as we got her hired good, the COVID came along and we weren't able to get her out of California for a while. So she worked remotely on some of the audits there. And since then, she has successfully rebuilt that team of internal auditors, and she has a very knowledgeable and talented staff on board now. And so I'll turn it over to her to do the rest of the annual report for internal audit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Madam Chair. So like Ken said, I joined after I was able to physically join in this current fiscal year. So the annual report reflects the work that the office was able to do with very minimal staffing. So that included 4 audits, 3 reviews, some follow-ups, and various ways in which we provided ad hoc services to 20 different ad hoc requests from various departments throughout the city. So now we are fully staffed with the exception of the city auditor, which is open right now for recruitment. And we, so far this fiscal year, have issued the APD overtime audit that was published just last week. And we've issued 2 strategic reviews and a follow-up. So more to come from this office.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly, and thank you for working so hard in that department and getting them back up and running well. We appreciate that. Counselors, any other questions? Any other comments? Seeing none, we will call, have a vote.
Counselor Bassan?
Yes.
Counselor Davis?
Yes.
Counselor Pena?
Yes.
Counselor Sena?
Yes.
Counselor Gibson?
Yes.
Thank you. That passes 5-0.
Thank you. And I believe, well, it's not quite the last one. We're getting there though. We do, on item K, which is 039, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the sponsors, Counselors Sena and Davis.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. 039 is enacting the Healthy Families and Workplaces Ordinance to require that employers in the city provide paid leave to employees, and move it do pass.
There's a
Second.
motion for do pass and a second by Counselor Davis. So are there, pardon me? Okay. Counselor Bassan, you have your hand raised?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few comments, but I was hoping that I'm just gonna jump to the end and then go back. If there's any way to do deferral until the next FGO meeting, and the reasons that I would like this, and I'm hoping that we can find that boundary with it, but I've tried with council staff since last week to get a hold of Bieber to get their opinion of an update since coronavirus happened to Albuquerque, since the last update was completed in January this year. We have been unable to get a hold of them. And I'm gonna let Ms. Yara kind of chime in too in a minute, but if I can just run down my reasons for justification, that I think that if we can just hold off a little bit on this and find a compromise. You know, last week we were talking about changing the $10,000 grant to $20,000 grant because so many businesses are hurting right now and they need all the help they can get. The unemployment rate here in New Mexico we're almost #1 yet again for some of the worst things in the country. I talked to the Economic Development Department today. I was talking to them about the ability and the how much they've been educating some businesses, because I have heard, and even with what we've heard with some of the public comment tonight, there are certain people that may be going to work right now and they shouldn't be because of COVID or any other illness. And of course, now is of the utmost importance that people stay home when they're ill. However, we have the CARES Act right now, where the federal government has the I believe it's the Federal Families Coronavirus Response Act, where it's federally mandated that if people are sick, they have to stay home, and these employers are obligated to not have any consequences. They pay for that, and then they can get reimbursed from the federal government. So that expires on December 31st. I have talked with our office again on urging Congress to extend that, and they're looking at passing the HEROES Act. The Speaker of the House and the Senate leader are both for passing the HEROES Act, which would provide 80 hours of paid sick leave to employees per year, and then these businesses would get a federal tax credit. So this to me is a way that we could say people deserve to have paid sick leave, but without putting a burden on the small businesses that are really, really struggling right now. So I think that, you know, we need to find a way to have compromise, because I definitely agree that right now we need to be healthy and we need to help others stay healthy. But at the same time, I really am concerned that with our unemployment rate where it stands and small businesses struggling to where they are at this point, if we can just wait and see, we don't even know what the governor is going to do in the next week or two. Madam Chair, you even kind of hinted at what next. What are we going to hear? Are there going to be more closures? Because when the hits keep coming, I just am really concerned that we are going to have some serious unintended consequences if we make some permanent legislation this fast when there are so many things I believe that are on the horizon to help find that middle ground to where we can keep people safe and protected, but also keep businesses and employment rates where they're at. Ms. Yara, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, if Ms. Yara can go ahead and kind of talk about her contact with, or her attempted contacts with Bieber, I think that would be really good, because these are the people that did the study and then they did the update, and we're still trying to hear back on what their perspective is since coronavirus has hit Albuquerque.
Thank you, Counselor. Ms. Yara, would you like to fill us in a little bit on this, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to let you know that I have reached out to the staff at Bieber, Mr. Mitchell and his folks, and they are very sorry they couldn't join us for our meeting today. However, I am tasked with collecting any questions that you might have about the sick leave analysis that was done by Bieber, or any other questions, and they will certainly try and get us our answers before this comes before the full council, if it does. Again, they do apologize, but I am in contact with them for any questions you have.
Madam Chair, if I can follow up, please.
Yes, please do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. I feel like if they're going to be tasked with these questions, I've talked with Mr. Melendrez, I've talked with Ms. Yara about finding kind of their evaluation on where things differ from what they saw before in the study to where the impacts are now. But I am concerned, I am severely concerned that if we pass this at this point in time, when there are other fail-safes at this moment, if we can urge as a council the federal government to pass this HEROES Act, I feel like that's going to be where our priority should be, as far as making sure that we can find some kind of balance right now, rather than a polarized opinion, which I feel like is kind of where we become and we get to when it comes to finding out all of the different emails and constituent responses. It's either one way or the other. And I really believe that right now we have a really focused audience, and that they will be more apt to listen to us if we can band together and say we need to find balance for our economy and for our constituents and residents of the city. So I don't know if I need to make a motion or if this is something that the sponsors would be willing to do, but defer until the next FGO, which would allow us time to find out what the governor's doing, what the HEROES Act is doing, and what else is going on with Bieber and our city itself.
So we can take the motion for deferral if there's a second. Is there a second from anyone? There's a second from Councilor Pena. But before we vote on it, I need some clarity. We have talked about this literally for years, and I really haven't seen a whole lot of change in the bill. And so I'd like to talk about process, but before we even talk about that, I would like to find out, we did do a Bieber study on this in the past. Is that correct, Ms. Yara? And how long ago was that?
Yes, Madam Chair. So the original analysis was completed in November of 2018. And then that actually was the Meteor study. Of course, it did a survey of both employers and employees in the city, and came up with the amount of employees that aren't covered by any kind of leave, paid leave benefit. It also estimated the cost per employee to employers for providing a leave benefit based on how large your company was. And then back in actually January of this year, 2020, they completed an update to the study. We had actually asked them to just revisit their findings based on what the County of Bernalillo had done with their sick leave ordinance, and kind of just summarized how many people would be covered based on the previous study if the city were to enact a similar ordinance to the county. So those are the analyses that we have in hand.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Yara. I noticed that Councilor Sena's hand was raised. Counselor Sena, did you have a statements you want to make or questions?
Yeah, actually, I do. I am against this deferral because I think 5-year conversation is quite long enough. In fact, even a national business and economic research just released an overall nationwide study on this topic and just how important paid time off is. I think we should move forward. The HEROES Act was passed by Congress in June, and Senate has been sitting on it for this long without any promise of moving on it. And we'll see with next year what will happen. And I think that it's important now more than ever to say that, yes, sick leave and staying home when you're sick is saving lives. In fact, the last time I discussed this, it was under 1,000 deaths, and now it's well over that. I think it's just urgent that, you know, we have this conversation with the full council. So I would rather make a recommendation, no recommendation, and move this to full council instead. I think it's important for all of us to have this discussion, and we're still having the conversation with businesses and constituents. We just heard in public comment that individuals are already just going to work sick. And that they're risking not just their own lives, but the lives of our community, and how important that is, and how it's really put our economy on hold because people are refusing or maybe can't stay home. So I would rather have this move onto council without a recommendation so we can have the full discussion.
So Counselor Davis, is your hand raised?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. Thank you. I just want to join Councilor Sena in saying that I would oppose that deferral for her reasons. And let me just note, I appreciate Councilor Bassan's enthusiasm and optimism. I've been here still sort of on the newer side from some councilors, but been here at least a little over 5 years, and I've seen us pass lots of legislation urging Congress to do lots of things. I don't think they've done a single one. So I'm not holding out hope that a better option for us to pass a resolution would suddenly get Congress to extend that leave that will expire at the end of the year. In fact, I appreciate it. This council stood up and said, we're not waiting on Congress or anybody else to step up and help our small businesses. Yes, this is someone else's job in many regards. Like, this should be a national policy. This should certainly be a statewide policy. The state of Colorado managed to do it in a bipartisan manner to protect every worker in Colorado, and their economy is booming and there's no signs that all things considered, that this leave will have a negative impact there. And so I think it is the right time for us to do this. Credit to the sponsor and the folks that have worked on this, including the business associations and businesses who came to the table. We heard them. When Madam Chair brought when I brought a bill 2 years ago, it covered every worker in the city of Albuquerque, would have been one of the most progressive and all-encompassing bills in the country. That was a bridge too far for some of our folks. So we pulled it back and we sat down and we talked more and more. I would like to see us do a bill like that, but I think this is a good first step, and it's certainly the thing we need right now. It covers most employees. Our Bieber study told us what would be covered under that comprehensive study, so we don't have to go back and do another one. We simply look at that one. And that study tells us that right now in the city of Albuquerque, 54% of private sector employers are already providing sick leave. But of those who do not, 90% of people who don't have it are folks that have incomes below $15,000 a year. Those are also but the people most susceptible to COVID, the most unlikely to have access to leave a job right now, because no one wants to leave a job if they're sick or have to care for someone else, because the odds of you getting it back are slim and none. This is basic. This is taking care of your people. If you built a business, and I just bought one and am building a new one, you don't do it by yourself. You do it with the hard work and sweat and the equity of the people who come to work every single day. And I appreciate very much from some of the folks who said that this is too hard for businesses. But the fact is, every business in the city of Albuquerque has been doing this and has to have a plan to do it under the federal COVID law to provide this type of leave. This just gives businesses more flexibility to create the plan that works better for them and their employees. And it mirrors very many of the provisions that the county already puts in place. And most of our employers with more than one location have locations in both. So I don't see this as an impediment. I see it as an easy thing for us to do to ensure the health and safety of our community at a time like this. I thank you for letting me make my speech, Madam Chair. I promise not to do it at the full City Council, but I think the point of the deferment, because of the City Council's shortened schedule for the end of the year, would require that this bill not be heard until January, meaning that thousands of people, working people in our city, would lose access to health care and the option to receive and schedule that health care if they had to be in work, and they would have to work sick and maybe not tell their employer. That's going to lapse in a few weeks, just about 6 weeks. A deferral today because of the City Council's short schedule ensures that this bill would not happen and those people would lose their health care. I'm not willing to do that today. I think we should send this to the full council and let every councilor weigh in. So I'll oppose the deferral. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And I know we have two more counselors who want to speak, but I just want to put something out there before we go to those other two counselors. And I'm not really clear what the federal law says. Am I the only one here? I'm assuming the sponsors probably have some knowledge of that.
Madam Chair, is someone there that can say to it? I have it here, but I don't want to.
Well, actually, I did ask our counsel, Mr. Melendres. So could you summarize this, the federal law as it relates to COVID and our workers?
Madam Chair, committee, yeah, it's actually relatively straightforward. The federal law presently authorizes 80 hours of leave for folks that are experiencing COVID or that are caring for a loved one that is experiencing COVID. There are also provisions for folks that are unable to work because of childcare complications. The federal government is subsidizing that leave. I believe it's in the form of a tax credit, as mentioned by Councilor Bassan, in order to recover the costs that a business would pay to cover that leave. However, as it was also noted, under the present circumstances, that will be expiring at the end of the year and has not yet been renewed. So up through the end of the year, based on the pandemic relief legislation that Congress has gotten through, folks are eligible in private employment to take the 80 hours of leave in order to deal with COVID and COVID-related needs.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. That's a good reminder. I did remember that as you were explaining it. So let's go back, but we have two counselors who had their hands raised. I believe Councilor Bassan was first, and then followed by Councilor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I realize that I've pretty much seen the writing on the wall here, but I just want to make sure to go on the record with part of this, that with what Mr. Melendres just pointed out, until December 31st, people will be able to take sick time, and they're not supposed to lose their job or have any repercussions per the federal guidelines, and businesses can get reimbursed for that. What happens January 1st is what we need to focus on. So I do believe that there still is some time in order to make sure that we can reevaluate this while still allowing for us to learn more in the next few weeks. I think that it's really something that we need to be aware of, that if there's federal and state duplication with what we do on a municipal level, that could compound the problem for businesses and for the city, when again, we just need to wait and find out what's going on in the next couple of weeks. And then as far as people, Councilor Davis said, people getting their job back, if they get COVID, I believe you said this, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but if people get COVID, the chances of getting their job back are slim to none. And I think that the same can be argued the other way around. If we rush this through and businesses have to shut down, whether it be because of the governor's mandates that come down from the state, or whether it be because of this and finances, I think that people getting their job back, the chances are slim to none in a lot of circumstances. So And the last thing that I want to make sure to get on the record is I really find it hard to say that we can lean on the results of the Bieber study when the last time it was looked at was in January. And that was everything drastic that we've been battling through the trenches. So again, I really think that we need to make sure to be very cautious in how we proceed and not rush this, because I think there's a way we can do it. I am optimistic.
Thank you. Then Counselor Sena, and then we'll go ahead and vote on the deferral.
Well, so a few things I want to point out, especially regarding the federal bill, is something that I studied in depth, not only because it's in my specialty area of health policy, but healthcare workers are exempt from the Family First Coronavirus Act. That means the people who are saving us don't have access to sick leave at this moment. So if they get sick, they're told to, you're probably just gonna have to go to work, even though they're caring for our most vulnerable. So healthcare workers are exempt, and it's only temporary, right? So it ends in December, and that means we need to pass this, and it won't go into effect, as the bill states, until January. There's also a 90-day delay in benefits so that you can accrue hours immediately, but you won't be able to utilize it for 90 days. So businesses have that buffer until March to actually start paying employees if they're sick. So that's why it's so critical that we vote and discuss this now. One thing I also want to mention, that this bill, this ordinance, is quite similar to the county. And if we did a Bieber study already to evaluate the county ordinance as it relates to the city, there's very small differences between the county and this bill, whereas it starts at 11 employees of 11 or more were in the county, and ours is at 10 within the first year. And the second year that it's implemented, it goes to 3, which is similar to the county. The hour of accrual is the same, 1 for every 32, with 56 hours being the max hours that you are able to accrue within the year. So the fact that this is so similar to the county, and we've already discussed this ad nauseum, that it's important that we have paid sick leave. Not only that, the national level has already evaluated this as to how important it is, and by whether it's, you can look at studies by Forbes, you can look at it by Business Insider, you can look at it from restaurant reviews such as Eater. They've all said how important it is to have sick leave and how it's actually prevented thousands of COVID cases by the day because we have sick leave. So I think it's important now than ever that we enact this, we pass it so that it goes into effect by January, because there isn't that stability. When this expires in December, we won't have that. And healthcare workers already don't have sick leave, and they are our backbone right now. They're who are saving us. And that includes our own family members that are on the line. So I think it's urgent that we do this.
Thank you, Counselor Sena. Counselor Pena, your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to make sure that Councilor Bassan got her second, because, I always felt bad when you don't get a second on your, but I can't support the deferral, but I can support, going to full council. I always think that when we make these types of decisions that, it affects all 9 city council districts equally. So or a motion to move this to full council, and so maybe I'll just make that, I'll do that in the form of a motion. And then I just wanted to ask Mr. Melendez, just a couple of questions, because I've been getting a lot of calls. So just for a matter of the record, just can you tell us how from the county, is it significant? Is it not significant? I guess in relation to the bill. And then with the Bieber study, again, I've been getting a lot of questions on that, saying that it's not, you know, it's the study shouldn't be valid anymore because, you know, things are different. So I just wanted just a, you know, just a matter of record, just to say what the differences are. And if, you know, from a legal perspective, do you feel that the study is still valid in its current form with the information provided in there? And I think that's it.
Madam Chair, committee, so there are a handful of administrative differences between the city's ordinance and what's being proposed here, but I think there are only two really practical technical differences that relate to how folks would comply or what an employee is entitled to and what an employer's obligations are. And the first, I think they've already been mentioned, but just to outline them, the first is how this applies to businesses with differing numbers of employees. In the county, its ordinance begins to take effect when a business has 2 employees. So if you have 2 or more employees in Bernalillo County, you are subject to the ordinance. Also, the second point is related to that, and it relates to what your right is with respect to the number of hours you're allotted from your employee. And that also relates back to the number of employees that your business has. So in the county, it applies to 2 or more. In the city, it starts with 3. So if you have 2 employees in the city, you're not going to be subject to this ordinance. You don't become subject until you have 3 employees. But if you have 2 employees in the county, then you are subject to the ordinance. So that's the first. The second is in the county, if you have 2 to 10 employees, the obligation under the ordinance is to provide 28 hours of leave for your employees. And it accrues at the same rate, 1 hour per 32 hours worked. And then if you have between, it's 11 and 34 employees, and I want to just make sure I have that number exactly right. Employers with between 11 and 35 employees are obligated in the county to provide 44 hours, and that obligation begins in January of 2021. And for employees with over 35 employees, for employers with over 35 employees, they are obligated to provide 56 hours of leave. So there's 3 tiers within the county, depending on how big of a business you're running. 2 to 11, you provide 28 hours. 11 to 35, you provide 44. Over 35, you provide 56. In the city, the proposal is that every employer with more than 3 employees will be obligated to provide 56 hours to their employees. So if you have 3 employees, you're going to be providing 56 hours. If you have 50 employees, you're going to be providing 56 hours. So that's a big distinction between the cities and the counties. However, with respect to that obligation in the city, smaller employers do not become obligated to provide sick leave benefits until 2022. So there's a two-tier phase-in to give smaller businesses the ability to kind of tee up to get ready to provide the leave as required by the ordinance. And the second question you asked was related to the Bieber study, and you phrased it in the context of a legal question, but there's really not a legal answer there. I think it's a policy question for this council, for this committee to evaluate. Number one, whether or not that study is relevant to what the issues are in the city, and if so, continue to be in 2 contexts. The first is it was done pre-pandemic. It was done related to a sick leave bill that was before you when the state of the city and the economic sort of underpinnings of small business did look different. Most likely, we don't have any information in that study on how things have changed since that time. And then with respect to what was evaluated of the county, that evaluation is likely very close to what the impact would be in the city because the bills are so similar. However, again, I believe that information is also pre-pandemic. So I think when you look at that analysis, a relevant question is it stale data at this point, given how quickly things have changed? And I think that's a policy question for the committee and for the council to evaluate as to whether or not additional new data would be appropriate at this time, balancing against the need of employees under these circumstances.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, if I can do a follow-up question.
Please.
So then one other thing is that one other call, I'm trying to remember all the calls that I've received on this. The other one is that what if you're doing business in both the city and the county? And, people are asking about inconsistencies, and that was kind of my issue since the beginning. I just wanted to make sure but anyway, some folks were saying, well, like maybe you're, I'm trying to think of what they told me they did, I don't know, construction or whatever. So you hire people to do, construction, and they're working at 2 job sites, one's in the city, one's in the county, which would prevail in terms of sick leave, or would that be a conflict?
Madam Chair, Councilor Pena, I think that would depend on a few factors. The way that the county set up their ordinance is that if you are a business that is located in the county in the sense that you receive your business registration from the county, or if you have principal premises of business within the county, then you are subject to their ordinance to the extent that you're doing that business within the county. This ordinance, as proposed, also has definitions of who would constitute an employer or an employee. And I want to make sure that I give that exactly right to you. So just give me 1 second here. So an employer, as defined in this ordinance, is also a business that has a city business registration from the city. And so if you are doing business in a way that requires you to have that registration in both places, then I think that it's reasonable to conclude that the obligation would be required upon you, depending on where you're doing that business, based out of which type of, which company or whatever it is that you're doing business. But if you're domiciled in the county and performing work in the city, it does not appear that you would be a business for purposes of an employer for purposes of this ordinance. So you would have to comply with the obligations imposed on you by the county.
Thank you, Ms. And I think I made a motion. I don't know if there was a second or not.
Madam Chair, the motion for the deferral has not been voted upon yet. And so that is a motion that takes precedent over anything else on the table. So you'll need to dispose of that motion before entertaining any other motions. And so Councilor Pena's motion would need to come after that vote.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
Thank you. I should know that by now. So we still have 2 hands raised from councilors, but I will remind you, we are just voting on the deferral. So does anybody have anything new to say? Councilor Bassan, you're saying yes, you have something new to say. All right,
yes.
Go ahead, please.
Madam Chair, thank you. It's actually a question for Mr. Melendrez for the public, because I too would like clarification, but I think this is new. Can it be explained how, if the county has passed this, how that differs if the city passes it? And because a lot of people would argue that the city's in the county. So if we can just get clarification on that for both my benefit and I imagine other people as well.
That's a very good question. And I think that it can be answered in this instance by simply looking at the language that the county enacted and the language that the city enacted. And so, or is proposing, at least. The city has not enacted anything yet, so that the city is considering, the city council is considering. So looking at the ordinance that the county enacted What is relevant is the way that it defined an employer. And an employer is someone who needs to get a business registration from Bernalillo County. And so if you take that requirement and you cross-reference it with the county's business registration ordinance, that ordinance is administered in a way that requires only those businesses that are domiciled, physically premised within the county to get that business registration. So if you're physically premised within the county, you have to get a business registration in the county. And because of that fact, you are subject to the county regulation with respect to sick leave. If you're premised within the city, then you would be, as proposed here, you would fall within the definition of an employer in the city, in which case you would be obligated to comply with the city's regulation. At this time, under these facts, given the way that the county enacted its ordinance, it can be answered. That question can simply be answered by looking at what the county did. And they said only those businesses premised within the county are subject to their ordinance.
Okay. All right. Counselor Sena, do you have something new?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do. And I know this will just be brief because I know we need to vote on this deferral, but I just wanted a quick question for the administration, because I know this was only included in one sentence of the Bieber study, that paid sick leave is important and critical in preventing infectious diseases from spreading, and that when evaluated in a public health perspective, how critical it is. So I'd like to ask the administration if there's an expert in public health to answer the question, how important is it to be staying home when you're sick? And how much has that impacted New Mexico?
Chairman Gibson and Councilor Sena, I would need to get back to you on that to talk to environmental health, to talk to Ryan Mast. He's not with us right now, but I can get him on the phone and I can answer that question for you. Would you like me to do that?
We can just move on to the vote if that's okay. But I just wanted that to be the forefront in our minds as we think about this topic, because it is a public health issue as we're in a public health emergency. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. So let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. And this is on the deferral.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
On the deferral, no.
Counselor Pena,
No.
Counselor Sena,
No.
Counselor Gibson.
No. No.
That fails on a 4-1 vote.
Thank you. Thank you, counselors. Okay, so I think now we have on the floor is a motion for a due pass. And I'm wondering if I would like to ask the sponsors if they would reconsider a motion for no rec without recommendation.
I would defer to
Counselor Sena?
Yeah, I would like to move this to council with no recommendation.
All right. And I'll go ahead and second that for you. Oh, I saw one finger up from Counselor Davis, so that'd be a second. Oh, okay. All right, a second from myself then. Thank you. So seeing no other comments or questions, we'll go ahead to before we do, I just have a couple of things. I can do this very quickly. I want to emphasize that this, for myself, this is not about need. That goes without saying. Yes, we need this. We need this, but we need a law that's going to stand up and that's going to afford as much consideration to employers as necessary. This has been a very adversarial issue since, I don't know when, well, since I was on council or shortly after is the first time that I became aware of it. And so my goal with the resolution that I put up was really to try to bring down that adversity, it's become so polarized. So that's what I would like to see more things happen. And I do have questions that I think that I can ask during the council when this is heard at council, but there are going to be questions about process. How the argument that I made last time we talked about this bill was that businesses have not been, this hasn't been discussed with businesses. And I'm not really positive that it's been discussed very much this time. So that's something I want to talk about, not now, but during our council meeting. What about businesses that have existing arrangements? Hopefully the sponsors have talked to some of them. The unemployment rate, I think, is really staggering. 9.4% unemployment. That's big. So with that, ready to go ahead and take a close from the counselors, and we can vote on the motion of without recommendation.
Urge your support.
Thank you. And Counselor Sena.
Urge your support.
All right. Please take a roll call vote.
Yes.
Counselor Davis.
I'm sorry, Madam Clerk. My dogs were barking at just the right moment just to confirm the motion on the floor is to move forward with no rec.
Yes.
I vote yes. Thank you. My apologies.
Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Counselor Sena.
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. Thank you, counselors. Moving ahead on this is R20, revising the reporting requirements regarding the efforts of the Homeless Coordinating Council. Counselor Bassan, would you like to present this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify too. You said R20. Is it R108 though?
I'm sorry, R108.
I just wanted to make sure to read the right one. Thank you. So on R108, it's revising the reporting requirements regarding the efforts of the Homeless Coordinating Council. I move it to pass, and I can share kind of the reasoning behind that in just a moment if you'd like.
Okay, we have a motion of a do pass. We have a second. Is that a second, Counselor Davis? Counselor Pena, second. Thank you. Go ahead, Counselor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm willing to hear from Director Pierce as well. The reason this came about on my end was with ABCGC, it's written into this legislation that when the Homeless Community Council was created, it was to report to ABCGC, and then COVID happened. So we've been canceling meetings just because there wasn't a lot on the agenda. So it's just a fail-safe that if ABCGC is canceled, it gets reported to the full council so that we can be in the loop as a council and have the reports come through from the committees as they do from the other ones, from all these other meetings like this one that we're in right now.
Okay, so we're amending that, correct? That previous resolution?
Yes, so it will be revising the reporting requirements.
Thank you, Counselor Bassan. Let's see, any questions, or should we hear from the administration? Counselor Davis, do you have a question or comment, sir?
I just wanted to ask, Madam Chair, if maybe the sponsor could clarify, so what exactly it was she was looking for in this that wasn't covered in the original resolution. the coordinating council is down to its last meeting. It's already released. It's publicly released its framework, and that's scheduled to come to the city council. So I'm curious if there's something different that the sponsor's looking for before that council has its last meeting, which I think, and the director can correct me, I think is this week, if I remember.
Councilor Gibson and council members, if I understood you correctly, Councilor Davis, the Homeless Coordinating Council is meeting tomorrow. It's not the last meeting, and maybe I just didn't quite hear you correctly. It's just one of the every 2-week meetings, and it happens to be happening tomorrow.
And okay, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair and Councilor Davis. The intention is that for as long as these meetings go on, again, if for some reason the committee chair of ABCGC deems that there's not enough for the agenda to hold a meeting at this point in time, that there will be still that monthly reporting. And I think this really honestly came up when there were several counselors that I spoke to, including myself, where we just kind of didn't know what was happening. And it honestly, for me, it slipped through the cracks, and it wasn't anything I believe is intentional. I just feel like it was one of those just out of sight, out of mind. So at this point, if these meetings happen, I think it would be really good to ensure that if in the event that the one place that we had it to be reported to so that it could then come back to council, we can make sure that everyone is on the same page and we get those regular updates.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. It was sort of a circumstance of you know, like you say, unintended results of the pandemic and not having as many ABCGC meetings as we'd had in the past. So. Okay, so any other questions or comments on this? Councilor Pena, go ahead, please.
Just want to clarify for the record that it wasn't a result of not having ABCGC meetings. This was actually a decision by some councilors to put together a smaller committee to kind of work with the county to look at this issue. I voted against the resolution because I thought that ABCGC was the appropriate avenue for this to go through, because it actually involved more of the counselors. You know, I was a little reluctant of the process just to have a few counselors deciding how these dollars were going to be of the city.
Okay,
So, but you know, it passed. Excuse me. Oh,
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I just, you know, I think it's great that Councilor Bassan moved this forward. I just think, you know, it's important, just like anything else, when we're making these really, really large decisions that impact our city. I think it's important to have all the counselors part of it, or at minimum, at least being informed of what's happening at these meetings.
I agree with that. So there is one other. Councilor Davis, go ahead, please.
I enjoy not being the chair because I can participate. Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have to wait till the end at least, but this will be my final. No, I just want to say, and I don't, no need to go back and forth. I just want to clarify that this is the process that the city council voted on in order to do that. But this group does not have the authority to, the Homeless Coordinating Council doesn't have the authority to spend any money. It's only making recommendations. It's been made very clear, and I believe in the original resolution, that after the mayor's process to determine where to build a large gateway center wasn't able to find a home, we did design a different process to make recommendations to the city council and the county commission on how maybe to spend some available funds. But those meetings have been open to the public. A number of staffers from the city council have participated. And of course, the minutes and the information is available publicly, so we can certainly share that. But I want to be clear that this group doesn't have the ability to spend any money. It's more of a sort of a tiger team to really focus on these issues and work with the neighborhoods who are most likely to be impacted by future sites, and to bring those recommendations back to the council. I think we expect to see those back sometime later this month or early next month, no matter what, because that group can't do anything without our permission. So for that reason, like I understand the sponsors need to do this. It's probably a good language cleanup, but I don't think it's necessary. Again, I think it's one of those where it's very clear that only the city council can expend money for that purpose, and we haven't authorized it yet. So when they're ready, I think that will be back to us. So, but I appreciate it. I understand, and again, I don't think it changes the dynamic, but it's maybe a good technical cleanup, and so thank you.
Okay, so we will go do a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Basan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
No.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Stena,
No.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
That passes on a 3-2 vote.
You. And moving on, now we are on item M. This is R20-109. Counselor Sena, would you like to present this for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. R109 is amending the aggregate maximum amount of economic relief grants provided to small and local for-profit organizations negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic through the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES Act. I move and do pass, although I do have an amendment.
Do we have a second for the motion of do pass? Thank you, Counselor Davis. Counselor Sena, did you want to move your amendment now, or?
Madam Chair, if I could.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you, Julian. This would be committee amendment number 1. On page 1, line 2, strike the term amending the aggregate maximum amount and replace with removing the aggregate maximum limit. On page 3, line 3, and replace with the following: obtain a grant from the city. The total grant amount received from the city may not exceed $10,000. The explanation for this is that the amendment will remove the aggregate limit for the combined related grants amount from the city, county, and state, and will instead place a limit of $10,000 of the city funds received by each qualified business. I wanted to note that this amendment is really a compromise and still in discussion with others and other businesses that may have not qualified for the first round, and by the time this meets council, the second round, which has already started, has gone through. So I believe that this is meeting in the middle, and I believe we need a second, but I think this gets to some of the concerns.
Okay, counselors, any discussion, questions on this? Counselor Basan, your hand's raised? Go
Yes,
ahead,
please. Thank you, Madam Chair. Counselor Sena, I just wanted to find out, what is the plan for economic development should this end up getting passed at full council? How are they going to go back retrospectively and treat this depending on the funding that's left behind or not left behind? I realize we've had a discussion about not left behind if we get rid of all the funding, but if there's money left over, how is it going to be divvied out fairly for the remaining businesses that either have applied or haven't? And what's that process plan?
She moved it though.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair, if you don't mind me answering the question.
Yes, please,
yeah, I want to note that, again, this was hopefully already in the woodworks when we were having this conversation of how the original resolution was discussed as to how priority was met, especially those that had already met that aggregate amount. But rather than me discussing it of the full process, I'll have the Director of Economic Development discuss that since she's here.
Yes, Director, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson and Councillor Bassan and Councillor Senna. I was having a little problem. I was trying to listen into the Councillor Bassan's question exactly. Could you repeat that? Forgive me, I was having some audio issues, which doesn't happen often, but did this evening.
Councillor Bassan, could you repeat your question, please?
Yes, thank you. Now I froze on this end. Thank you, Madam Chair. Director, I am wondering, can you hear me okay? Okay. Director, I'm wondering what the process will be should there be funding left over after this second round. And if this amendment and bill were to pass at full council, what would the process be to go back retrospectively with the applications that have already come in order to evaluate which ones get more or not? What's the vision with that, please?
Sure, Councillor Bassan. So the plan would be to place those applications back in the queue. However, those that have already applied are being evaluated right now and will take priority. But those that didn't meet that aggregate amount will be placed back into the queue at the end of the list, per se. But those, again, that have applied, they've made it through the process in this first round that closed a week ago, are being evaluated right now and have taken priority.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I failed to get a second on the motion for the amendment. So Councillor Davis, there's a second. Thank you very much. So I do have one other question for you, Director. And thanks for the time we spent together on the phone recently. I found that very helpful. But I failed to ask you then, and I thought about it later. Are you seeing brand new businesses who are applying with this past first round, first phase that we have not yet seen applying?
Councillor Gibson, yes, we are seeing new businesses apply. I believe that it's a direct result of the grassroots approach that we've taken to make sure that businesses are made aware of the opportunity. But yes, we are seeing new businesses apply that we did not see before.
Okay. Can you give, I know it's hard to quantify, but well, I don't know, maybe more than, maybe 10% or less, maybe more or less?
Oh, Councillor Gibson, I could get you that number, but I would hate to misrepresent and give you a number that is not correct. But I'm happy to, I could get that for you. I can certainly do
all
that.
right. Well, yeah, even if it's a rough estimate.
Certainly.
I'm putting you on the spot here, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the councilors? Okay, we'll go ahead and take a vote then on the amendment.
Councillor Bassan.
Yes.
Councillor Davis.
Yes.
Councillor Pena.
Yes.
Councillor Senna.
Yes.
Councillor Gibson.
Yes.
Yes.
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. And now we're back on the bill. There are no other questions or, okay, Councillor Senna. Did you have your hand up, Councillor Senna?
Yes, but I think that was on accident because I forgot I'm able to close. I just wanted to urge your support, but I also would like to move this for immediate action, just because I think it's important that we kind of have this discussion and it's in time for the next few rounds.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Councillor Bassan. Did you have your hand up?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm wondering if we can move this without recommendation, if that would be something that's possible, or is immediate action even possible if we move without rec? Because I just think given the full conversation that we've already had and the investment that we've had from all of the council and the process and how many people are involved, I think that this should definitely catch the attention of all the other counselors, and then we can make the decisions once this second round closes on Friday.
Okay. All right, Counselor Sena, would you, that's directed at you, I believe, would you consider changing your motion to moving it without recommendation as amended?
Yeah, I'm open to that.
Okay, all right. Then I will go ahead and second that for you, and we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote on the bill, please.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena, Counselor Pena.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
That passes on a 5-0 vote.
Okay, so we do need to make a, take a second roll call vote on immediate action. Wait, oh, we don't have a motion yet. I'm sorry. So there's a motion and a second from Counselor Sena for immediate action, and from Counselor Bassan is the second. So now we're ready for a roll call vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. And let's see. This is, now we're on item N, our last item. This is R110, approving the fiscal year 2021 audit plan as submitted by the Accountability and Government Oversight Committee. I will move a do pass. And looking for questions. Oh, there's a second. Thank you from Counselor Davis. Counselors, any questions or comments? We have Ms. Kelly here as manager. If we do have questions, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you. And that being the last item, and there are no further, being no other business, this FGL committee is now adjourned. Thank you very much.